Today I'm joined by Janet Hugo, a financial planner from Sterling Wealth, who's been in the industry for 18 years and during that time has actually won the Financial Planner of the Year award. So she's well placed to share with us her expertise. Today we're going to talk to you around dealing with chronic illness and dread disease from a financial planning perspective, a very tough and personal topic. Now, chronic disease actually impacts more people than you'd care to imagine. Around 45% of Americans will have some form of chronic disease sometime in their life. And the dreaded disease stats are even worse. What goes with that as well is around the financial burden that places on the family when it comes to that. Now, Janet, not only are you a financial advisor, but unfortunately you've and your family have walked this road with your husband being diagnosed with cancer. So firstly, I want to just thank you for being willing to share your personal journey and offer your guidance to other people. So thank you very much for that. I know it's not always an easy topic that a lot of people want to talk about. So I want to break today into two parts. The first part, maybe if you can share some of your guidance around those people that maybe haven't been faced with a chronic illness or a dread disease in their family and what we should be doing. And the second part, maybe we can explore a little bit more about your experience and your journey and the road that you've walked. So maybe to kick it off, some people wouldn't have experienced an illness in the family. What should we all actually be doing now to help us plan for that dreadful what-if scenario?
Thank you, Siobhan. When I first started in the industry, or rather the profession, a statistic stuck in my mind that by the time we're 70% of us will have to face a dreaded disease event in their lives. And that's a cancer scare, a heart attack scare, a stroke, or something like that. So little did I realize when I put in place the plan for our family, which included insurances and investments and savings pots, that we would be living that journey. And it is a journey. When you start off with a diagnosis, it's quite shocking. It's surreal. You don't expect to be in that position at all, particularly in my family, because we didn't even have burnt toast because it's carcinogenic. So never did I think that we would be dealing with a cancer because we ate healthily. And yet when you're faced with it, there are a couple of tips I can give you. The one is give up on Dr. Google. The internet is not your friend in this instance. You employ experts to help you. And it's the same in financial planning. Employ the expert and then rely on them. Make them the first person that you call after you've got the diagnosis from your specialist and let them guide you along the way. Your medical aid expert is also going to be a stalwart in your camp. So let's go back a little bit. You put in place this financial plan and something terrible happens. You've taken at least, in our instance, 6 months and 6 different specialists to get to the point where you have your diagnosis. Now, I didn't perceive with our really excellent medical aid that medical aid only pays for the last specialist that you saw. So you need to have the cash available or the savings available to help you get through 6 different specialists. We went to pulmonologists, cardiologists, neurosurgeons, a neurologist, and then finally the hematologist that said to you, you've got a blood cancer. It's very rare. It's so good, we can treat this one. And then you begin your treatment plan. And you begin your treatment plan with your medical aid's help and consent, and please, you need gap cover because you're wanting to work with the specialists and they don't necessarily pay or rather charge what the medical aid is going to pay. So your gap cover is going to step in for the difference. At the same time, there's an enormous amount of time spent waiting. And your loved one who is ill generally is not able to carry on working if it's pretty serious. If you're going through chemotherapy, or in our instance, we went through a year of chemotherapy, and a bone marrow transplant, and almost 6 weeks in ICU and in isolation. So it's quite traumatic in terms of earnings. Assume the worst, because that gives you the privilege of taking the focus off work and back into health and health regeneration. The other expense that I was surprised by was all the alternative care that we decided we would also embrace. So we embraced juicing. And I'm going to laugh at this one, but our food bill went through the roof, because if you're turning a box of vegetables into 2 glasses of juice, it's expensive. And that kind of change in your budget also needs to be catered for.
So what I'm hearing from you is really 3 things. I'm hearing medical aid. I'm hearing, obviously, make sure you've got gap cover, that your financial earnings will be impacted, and that you're needing a pot of savings for the what if, that almost that safety net that's on the side, that you can turn to if faced with this. And it can be invested in something, obviously.
It must be invested, but in a very low-risk investment strategy, and your advisor will help you do that. I would say that these days, a good pot of emergency funding is probably a year's worth of your spending patterns, because it's not just the person who's become ill who's not going to be working anymore, but in my experience, it was that we both attended the specialist meetings, that we were both involved in traveling to and from the chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of time.
And it's not actually always just that there's the medical expense, it's the lack of income. So it's a double whammy on kind of your budget.
It is.
It's very scary.
It is. The other thing that was really interesting was how I suddenly gained a 3rd job, because my first job was my career, my second was family mother, my 3rd job was admin assistant. I suddenly had to deal with what the medical aids were willing to pay the doctors, what the doctors were wanting to claim, what the claims to the gap cover were, and the claims to the insurance companies were. So there's a lot of admin work that you take on as well.
So you need to have your ducks in a row is another thing that I'm hearing from you, to actually make sure that you're staying on top of all of the admin that comes with it.
Absolutely.
And I suppose a 4th job would actually be carer, and the amount of time that takes from a family. And I know we've spoken a little bit about this, and I think you mentioned to me one of the toughest things over the last, I think, 7 years has been the amount of time that this challenge has put onto you and your family.
It's the time drain, absolutely, but there's a name for it, and they call it caregivers fatigue. Because you're constantly putting your spouse's needs above your own, or that whatever that patient is, you're constantly caring for them, and there's a high sense of worry all the time. It's not an easy position. So what I recommend is take time to care for yourself. Take time to look for downtime. Look for an ability to rebuild your energies and your resources. I'd like us to go back to the other task that you need to stay on top of with what happens in a dreaded disease, chronic disease, and that is tax. This is where the tax man becomes your friend.
Didn't know he could.
He can. You're very able to submit all your medical expenses that are not paid by your medical aid, but be very careful to stay on top of your proof of payment, because as soon as you submit your expense, SARS is going to say to you, and did you pay it? And you want to be able to say yes. So if you put in place your system in the beginning, it'll make it so much easier to say to SARS, give me back my refund. So that's been my little sense of joy. That's my payment for admin work.
Yeah. So medical aid and gap cover, tax, make the tax man your friend, and be on top of your admin, really. And then I think also what I'm hearing from you is give yourself a little bit of a break too.
So a dreaded disease or a chronic illness like this, or a special needs child, is actually a dry run at your estate plan. So let's look at this. Is the will in place? Is the ability to have a power of attorney in place? Are you able to live off the resources that you've built up as a family and the insurances that you've put in place to take care of the income that is going to be lost? Are your taxes efficient, organized, ready for this problem? Are you able to make all these submissions? It's a test case of what happens when somebody dies.
Janet, thank you so much for sharing your road with us, your journey. I know it hasn't been an easy one, but hopefully what you've given us today will help some people along their tough roads that they need to face.
It's a pleasure, Siobhan. Thank you.